How's it going, everyone? Got a lot to talk about. Obviously, everybody's been talking about the Xbox and Microsoft layoffs. Disastrous situation, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of this video. I'll highlight another news topic that I find pretty interesting and one worth talking about. But I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen a lot of people talk about it, and I'll give you guys my opinion on the layoffs and studio closures. It's a disastrous situation. I mean, there's no other way to really put it in terms of how badly and how poorly Microsoft and Xbox has been mismanaged over the course of the last decade or so, and just pitfall after pitfall. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. First of all, I do want to talk about a very interesting story as far as the Xbox and PlayStation, I guess you could say, relationship. Games from PlayStation now coming to Xbox as well. Look, I don't think it's going to be a situation where some major IPs that in-house PlayStation developers, first-party PlayStation developers create are going to end up on Xbox. However, Helldivers 2 is coming to Xbox Series on August 26th, and it will be released by publisher Sony Interactive Entertainment, developer Arrowhead Game Studios. Remember, Arrowhead is not a first-party Sony studio. However, they did team up with Sony. They are a second-party studio, much like Insomniac was back in the day when they were releasing like the Ratchet & Clank Future games and the Resistance games. And Arrowhead did team up with Sony to do Helldivers 2, and they published Helldivers 2, much like Sony published Helldivers 1 as well. But now, the co-op third-person shooter Helldivers 2 will be dropping on Xbox Series on August the 26th. Here's another interesting piece of information. Helldivers 2 is coming out on Xbox Series on August 26th. What's the relevance of that date? That is the same exact day that Gears of War Reloaded will be dropping on PlayStation 5. So how about that? You know, it seems like the Xbox guys and the PlayStation guys, for one day, they can come together and be like, hey, y'all are playing Helldivers 2, we're playing Gears of War, all is good. Now, I think there is orders of magnitude difference of an IP like Helldivers that is, while it's a major game, and it's definitely done very well. First of all, it came out on PC day one. It's not a first-party PlayStation IP, and it's not like Helldivers is this franchise with a significant lineage. I get that Helldivers 1 came out in 2015, but, you know, it's not a pillar, a cornerstone of PlayStation. On the other hand, Gears of War is absolutely a cornerstone, a pillar of Xbox, and that game coming out on PlayStation, I do think is a far bigger deal than Helldivers 2 coming out on Xbox. However, I still think this is really cool to see, and I don't think this is gonna pave the way for a Horizon, a God of War, a Last of Us, any of those games coming to Xbox. I think if you think that, you'd be a little bit foolish. However, I do think there's opportunity to release games on Xbox. You know, I look at a game like the Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. That's a game that absolutely I would keep it exclusive to PlayStation right out the gate. But if you want to talk about a game that you could, you know, a year after release, 18 months after its release, port it to Xbox, that's one game that I could see, you know, it might be beneficial to port that. You know, there might be a fighting game community on Xbox that's wanting to check a game like that out. You can sell them DLC, so on and so forth. Helldivers 2, obviously a $40 game, but it also has live service components, so you're monetizing Xbox players, and there's a lot of opportunity there as well. And Helldivers 2, I feel like, is the type of game that'll really resonate with the Xbox community, whereas games like, you know, Final Fantasy 16, I see a lot of talk about that game's success on Xbox. $50 a game, $70 for the complete edition. 2 years after release, you know, Final Fantasy has never been a gigantic Xbox franchise, whereas Helldivers 2, multiplayer-centric, chaotic, that's more in line with the Xbox brand, and I think it would do fairly well. Not gonna be on Game Pass, it will be a $40 game, but yeah, I think this is smart, and definitely something that I think Sony can do in the future with the right games. They're live service games. Like, if Fair Game ends up gaining any sort of traction, maybe they'll port that to Xbox down the line. But it's games like that, and, you know, Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, I don't know if that's something that they would think about porting over, but I could see the argument being made, like, 18 months after that game's launch, you do some sort of complete edition release with some DLC, you port that over to Xbox. I think that could do fairly well, and I don't think that would take away much from PlayStation, but nonetheless, we'll see if that turns out. But yeah, Helldivers 2 coming to Xbox Series on August 26th. Found that to be a pretty interesting story, and the same day as Gears of War. Alright, moving on from that, gotta talk about the Microsoft layoffs a little bit. It's a disaster show. Obviously, we gotta send our best wishes to anyone that's been affected. You hate to see stuff like this. This is one of the brutal realities of gaming recently, and it's so unfortunate to see when you look at the money that Microsoft makes, but it's all about the bottom line. It's about the stock. It's about all of those factors, and that is the reality of corporate America a lot of times. But on top of Turn 10 losing 50% of its studio, layoffs across the board, the one that I think shook a lot of people is the fact that the initiative has been shut down and Perfect Dark has just been outright canceled. Bear in mind that Perfect Dark was one of those games that was revealed very early on in the Xbox Series' life to be one of the key, like, oh my god, Xbox is getting this game. It was announced at the VGAs in 2020. Yes, it was announced 5 years ago, and the game has been in the works for like 7 years. Think about all of that and just gone with the wind. And they showcased Perfect Dark last year, but now there's rumblings that that was kind of a misleading showcase. Whatever the case may be, it is canceled, and Initiative has just been outright shut down. The entire studio shut down, and they made a big deal about establishing Initiative, announcing the reboot of Perfect Dark. What a disaster this is, and an absolute clown operation. Like, I could say what I want about Concord and Sony doing that, and don't lose sight of the fact that Concord was still a significant L and Sony being completely out of touch, but Microsoft doing all of this, it's just been such a disastrous actual decade for them, really going back to, I would even go back to before the mandatory Connect with the Xbox One and the used game fiasco with the Xbox One. I would go back, and I remember this vividly. Xbox was very hot in 2007 and 2008. I remember vividly the release of Halo 3, Gears of War 2 in 2008, Fable 2 in 2008. They were doing incredibly well, and then the shift really began with chasing this different audience, with them really trying to gain traction with Kinect. I remember the reveal of Kinect in 2009 and 2010 being very bare bones years for Xbox, where 2009 you got Halo 3 ODST, and 2010 you got Halo Reach, but it seemed like we were really diluting the offerings on Xbox, and it was a lot of focus on Kinect. That parlayed into the announcement of Xbox One, where Kinect became mandatory initially, and then also the used game fiasco, and that compounded, and PlayStation really revving up in that era from a first-party standpoint, I think really started the domino effect of what you're seeing out of Xbox. They took a significant L in the Xbox One generation, and even to this day, they haven't been able to get back on track. They've done some good stuff here and there. Look, Game Pass is an incredible value. Acquisitions, you know, some people are down on acquisitions for sure, getting all of those big publishers and developers. And they have some good output in 2025, but you look at what's happening with the Initiative, you look at what's happened with Halo as well and the restructuring of that, but the Initiative story, I think, is just insanity. And on top of that, while the Initiative is going to get the bulk of the attention because Perfect Dark has been outright canceled, bear in mind that Turn 10 has been one of the integral studios of Microsoft for like 2 decades at this point, going back to the release of the original Forza Motorsport. And that's the studio that's gonna lose 50% of their staff? That's insanity. Yeah, the latest Forza Motorsport wasn't this, widely acclaimed universal success, but it's still one of the pillar IPs for Microsoft, and Turn 10 losing 50% of their staff is just incredibly unfortunate as well. Look at their Metacritic track record as far as Turn 10 is concerned. It's like banger after banger. And again, Perfect Dark being utilized as one of the selling points of the Xbox Series and then being canceled, clown show. It's just like with Fable. Fable was revealed in June of 2020, and I really do believe there's a lot more issues with that game and the development of that game than they are letting on. Delaying a game for a year without any sort of update on its release window and just how that game has been received, I think they have to do a complete restructuring of that game. I don't think that new Fable game is going swimmingly in development, but you're talking about these games getting revealed in 2020, you guys. We are in 2025. Perfect Dark is canceled. Everwild is canceled as well. Fable, they're saying it's gonna come out in 2026. Is it gonna come out in 2026? I don't know. Nobody really knows for sure if it's coming out in 2026, and you're setting up what's supposed to be this big 25th anniversary year for Xbox, And I do think Gears of War E-Day will be a big release. I do think the new Halo will be a big release. We're supposed to see a new Forza in 26. We're supposed to see a new Fable in 26, but every year and every couple of months, really, it just feels like it's a disaster situation coming out of Microsoft. And a story like this is going to be relevant to PlayStation guys as well, because you would have thought that Perfect Dark would have been one of those games that would ultimately come to PlayStation as well. But beyond all of that, you know, who cares about the games coming to PlayStation, not coming to PlayStation? This is a significant amount of jobs that are being lost, studios being shut down, studios, games that they've been working on for north of half a decade just being outright canceled. It's an absolute disaster show, and I am not cheering for the downfall of Xbox. I've said it over and over again. I want Xbox to be at an even healthier place than PlayStation, because PlayStation is the console that I have always preferred, and I don't like what PlayStation is doing right now, and I want Xbox to check them a little bit, and that's what a healthy marketplace would be, a healthy competitive marketplace. However, that is just not happening right now, and I don't know if it's going to happen anytime in the near future, and that consequentially will ultimately impact PlayStation as well. It ultimately is going to impact the consumer, but again, when lives are being affected and people are getting laid off, that is paramount, and that is what's the most sad part about all of this, especially with how much money Microsoft is making hand over fist. But that is going to do it for me. Again, Helldivers 2 coming to Xbox. I wanted to lead with the positive news because I do think there's some positive element to that. August 26th, same day as Gears of War. And obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention all of the unfortunate news going down with Microsoft Gaming, so on and so forth. That's going to do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.